Lena stood outside her small cabin, staring at the empty horizon. The cold wind bit at her skin, carrying the scent of winter across the barren landscape. The settlement she called home was quiet, as it usually was. The stars above twinkled brightly in the clear night sky, but they offered no warmth. Her stomach growled softly, reminding her of the few scraps of food she had left. She had lived in the colony for many years now. She had no family to speak of, no one to turn to when things got tough. But she had always found a way to survive. Lena was resourceful, determined and strong in her own quiet way. Tonight she had one loaf of bread left, hard and stale, but it would do. She had been saving it, hoping to have a little something to eat the next day, but she knew that there wouldn't be anything else. She sighed, tucking the bread under her arm as she walked back toward her cabin, her boots crunching the snow beneath her. That's when she saw him. A figure hunched over in the snow, barely visible in the dim light. At first, Lena thought it was a trick of the shadows, but as she got closer, she saw that it was a man. His clothes were ragged, torn in several places, and his face was covered in dirt and frost. He seemed to be unconscious, his body limp against the frozen ground. Lena stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. She hadn't expected to find anyone out here. The settlement was far from any major routes, and no one would be foolish enough to wander these dangerous lands alone. But this man, whoever he was here, and he was in trouble. Without hesitation, Lena rushed to him. She knelt down, her breath clouding in the cold air as she reached for his shoulder and gently shook him. "Hey, are you all right?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. The man groaned softly, his eyes flickering open. His gaze was unfocused, distant, as if he was barely aware of his surroundings. For a moment he didn't respond to her. But then, as if recognizing the warmth of another human presence, he slowly turned his head to look at her. His eyes were a pale shade of blue, and they seemed to hold a sadness, an emptiness that Lena couldn't quite explain. "Please, help me," he whispered, his voice weak. Lena's heart went out to him. She had no idea who he was, but she knew he needed help. "You're safe now," she said softly, glancing around to make sure no one else was nearby. The colony was isolated, and this man might have walked miles to get here. She didn't know if he had been in a fight or if he was just lost, but it didn't matter. He needed help, and she was the only one who could offer it. She gently lifted him up, wrapping his arm around her shoulders for support. He was heavy, and his movements were slow and labored. Lena gritted her teeth, trying to ignore the strain on her body as she guided him toward her cabin. The journey was slow, but she wasn't going to leave him out here in the cold to die. She couldn't do that. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached her cabin. Lena opened the door with her free hand, her breath coming out in heavy bursts as she helped the man inside. The warmth from the small fire in the corner immediately hit her face, and she sighed in relief. She set him down gently on the floor next to the hearth, wrapping a blanket around him as best as she could. The man's breathing was steady now, though it was still shallow. His face had a pale, almost ethereal quality to it, like he wasn't quite real. Lena didn't know what to make of it, but she pushed the thought aside. He needed warmth. He needed food. As she looked around her cabin, she realized that her situation wasn't exactly the best for a guest. Her home was small and modest, barely enough room for her and her few belongings, let alone someone else. But she wasn't about to turn him away, not when he needed her help. She turned back to the man, still sitting by the fire, staring at him for a moment. There was something about him. Something strange that she couldn't put her finger on. Maybe it was the way his eyes seemed to glow faintly in the firelight, or the way his posture was always perfectly still, as if he was waiting for something. But she shrugged it off. Maybe he was just exhausted. With a sigh, Lena broke off a small piece of the bread and held it out to him. "Here," she said gently. "It's all I have, but it'll keep you going for now." The man's eyes flickered to the bread, and for a moment Lena thought he might refuse. But then he slowly took the piece from her, lifting it to his lips. As he ate, Lena sat down across from him, her heart still pounding in her chest. She didn't know why, but something about this man felt different. "Thank you," the man murmured after a while, his voice clearer now. I don't know how to repay you for this." Lena smiled softly, shaking her head. "No need for repayment," she said, her voice warm. "Everyone needs help sometimes." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes studying her face. "You are a rare soul," he said quietly. "Most would have turned me away." Lena shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. I just do what I can. The man nodded slowly, as if weighing her words carefully. I will remember this, he said at last. And one day I hope I can repay your kindness. Lena didn't know why, but those words unsettled her. He was so calm, so composed, and yet there was a power in his voice that made her uneasy. Still, she chose to ignore it. He was just a man, after all. Just someone who needed help. Get some rest, she said gently. You'll need it. The man's eyes closed, and for the first time that night he seemed to relax. Lena stood up, glancing once more at the strange figure before turning to the window. The snow still fell outside, the world untouched by the warmth inside her cabin. As she pulled the covers tighter around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this man was not just any beggar. There was something else about him, something hidden beneath the surface, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. The fire crackled in the corner, and as the man slept soundly by the hearth, Lena lay down on her small cot, the weight of the evening heavy in her mind. She closed her eyes, wondering what the dawn would bring. Lena woke to the soft crackling of the fire in the corner. The cabin was quiet, save for the gentle breathing of the man she had helped the night before. She rubbed her eyes and sat up slowly, stretching her stiff muscles. The morning light was just beginning to peek through the small window, casting a soft glow over the room. The man was still asleep, his face relaxed in a way that made him seem almost peaceful. Lena watched him for a moment, her mind wandering back to the strange feeling she had gotten the night before. She couldn't quite explain it, but there was something about him that didn't seem ordinary. Maybe it was the way his eyes had glowed faintly in the firelight, or how he had carried himself with such quiet confidence, even when he was weak and hungry. She stood up, brushing the thought aside. He was just a man, a stranger in need of help. Nothing more. Lena moved to the small stove in the corner of the cabin and started boiling water for tea. She was always quick to rise in the mornings, but today, there was a sense of urgency in the air, a feeling that something was about to change. She couldn't explain why, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the events of the previous night were more than just a random encounter. As she poured the hot water into the pot, the man stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. His eyes met hers, and for the first time there was a clarity to his gaze that hadn't been there before. He was no longer the weak, helpless beggar from the night before. There was something in his posture now, something powerful and assured. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. He sat up slowly, his movements measured and controlled. He stretched, his muscles rippling beneath his torn clothing. His eyes lingered on Lena for a moment before he spoke, his voice deep and strong. "Thank you for everything," he said, his voice steady. "You've given me more than you know." Lena, though surprised by his sudden change in demeanor, forced a smile. "It's nothing," she replied. "I just helped a stranger. That's all." The man's lips curved slightly, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You did more than that," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that Lena couldn't quite place. "Your kindness has restored something in me, something I thought I had lost forever." Lena didn't fully understand what he meant, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. There was no mistaking the gratitude in his gaze. She set the kettle aside and turned to face him. "You're welcome," she said quietly. "But you still haven't told me your name. I can't keep calling you the man forever." He nodded as if considering her words. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice carrying a surprising amount of authority. "I am King Orin," he said. "Alpha King of the Volothian Empire." Lena blinked, not sure if she had heard him correctly. "What?" she asked, her voice betraying her confusion. He raised a hand as if to calm her. "I know what you must be thinking, but it's the truth. I am no beggar. I am a king, one who has been lost to his people for far too long." Lena felt her heart skip a beat. She had been expecting many things from this man, but this wasn't one of them. She didn't know what to say, so she simply stood there staring at him, her mind racing. King Orin seemed to sense her shock and offered her a faint, reassuring smile. "It may be hard to believe, but I assure you I am not the man you think I am. I was exiled from my kingdom, forced into hiding after a great betrayal. I have wandered the stars for years, searching for answers, for a way to reclaim my throne." Lena's mind was still spinning. She had no idea what to make of his words. He certainly didn't look like a king. His clothes were tattered and his face was weathered from the elements. But there was something in the way he spoke, in the way he carried himself, that made her believe him, even if she couldn't fully understand how or why. She took a cautious step forward, her voice still shaky as she asked, "But why would someone like you be out there in the snow starving?" King Orin's expression softened and he lowered his gaze. "I was cursed," he said softly. "The betrayal I suffered weakened me, stripped me of my strength. I had no choice but to wander, to hide in the shadows until the time was right to return." Lena's heart ached for him. She had no idea what it meant to be a king, to hold so much power and yet be cast aside so cruelly. She couldn't imagine the pain he must have felt, knowing that his own people had turned against him. "I never expected anyone to offer me help," King Orin continued, his voice growing stronger. "I didn't believe I was worthy of it. But when you gave me that bread, when you offered me your kindness, it sparked something in me, something that had been dormant for so long." Lena didn't know what to say to that. She had simply done what anyone would have done. She had helped a man in need. She hadn't known he was a king. She hadn't known he was someone special. But now, as she looked at him, she understood that there was something extraordinary about him, something far beyond the ordinary man she had thought him to be. "Is there anything I can do to help you now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. King Orin stood, his full height imposing as he looked down at her. "I don't expect anything from you, Lena," he said, his voice gentle. "You've already given me everything I could have asked for. But there is one thing I must ask." Lena's heart raced as she waited for him to continue. "I need your help," he said simply. "I can't reclaim my throne without an ally. And you are the only one who has shown me the kindness I've longed for. Will you help me restore what was lost?" Lena stood frozen, her mind reeling. She had only just met this man, and yet he was asking her to help him take on a task that seemed impossible. But there was something about him, something that made her believe in him, something that made her want to help. Without fully understanding why, Lena nodded. "I will help you," she said, her voice steady. King Orin's eyes lit up with gratitude, and for the first time he truly smiled. It was a smile that carried with it the weight of 1,000 lost years, the promise of a future restored. And in that moment, Lena knew that her life was about to change forever.